Welcome to the Book of Balance podcast, where real stories meet real numbers. I'm your host, Patricia Oholeguy, your bookkeeper and believer that business should serve your life, not consume it. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs who've built their dreams from scratch and learned to balance their books, their boundaries, and their energy along the way. Ready to turn the page on financial stress and write your own story of clarity? Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Book of Balance podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Oholeguy, and today we're doing something a little different. I am flying solo to dive deeper into a conversation that's been sitting with me since my recent interview with Dana Hunter Fradella from Girls Who Recover. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I highly recommend you to go back and check it out. Dana shared her powerful journey from corporate burnout to purpose driven entrepreneurship. And we talked about everything from perfectionism to money mindset to what she calls Lone Ranger syndrome. But there was a moment in that conversation that I haven't even been able to stop thinking about. We were talking about knowing your numbers in business, which as a bookkeeper is obviously my bread and butter. But then Dana said something that made me pause. She talked about my spiritual return on investment, not just a financial one. And that's what I wanted to explore with you today, the concept of emotional profits. Because here's the truth. And this comes from my years of running a daycare, consulting, holding two master's degree, and eventually walking away from it all to focus on what really mattered. We've been measuring success all wrong. Let me take you back to when I owned my daycare. From the outside, it looked successful. I had a wait list. I was in a nice neighborhood with access to good schools. I had staff, systems, and a reputation. But behind the scenes, I was drowning. I had disgruntled staff members who weren't following protocols. I had surprise inspections every week, and my son wasn't thriving in the very school system I've moved to that neighborhood for. And I was so stressed about keeping up appearances, maintaining the facade in the nice neighborhood, that I forgot to ask myself the most important question. What am I actually profiting from this? And I don't mean financially, because yes, the business was profitable on paper, but emotionally, spiritually, I was bankrupt. This is what I call the hidden costs of success. It's the price we pay when we measure our business and our lives solely by financial metrics. When Dana talked about being on that floor, sobbing with carpet burn, even though she had the six-figure job and all the external markers of success, I felt that in my bones because I've been there too. Hear what nobody tells you when you start a business. You can be profitable and still be failing. You can have a positive cash flow and a negative life flow. You can be making money and losing yourself. And this is especially true for women entrepreneurs because we're so good at powering through. We're so good at saying, I can handle it. We're so good at adding one more thing to our plate because we don't want to let anyone down. But here's the question I want you to sit with. What's the point of building a successful business if you're too exhausted, stressed, or disconnected to enjoy your life? That's not balance. That's just a different kind of prison. So let's talk about emotional profits. What are they? And how do we measure them? In my conversation with Dana, I mentioned that it's important to know your numbers to understand what part of your business are profitable and what parts aren't. But what I said something that I think is the key to everything is if you know the financial return is low, but the spiritual return is high, then it's working for you. This is the concept of emotional profit margin. Let me give you a concrete example from my own life. After I closed my daycare and went through my divorce, I had to completely rebuild and start my bookkeeping practice because it was something I knew, something I was good at, and something that gave me flexibility to focus on my son. Now, I could have grown that business aggressively. I could have hired 20 bookkeepers. I could have scaled into a huge operation. But here's what I asked myself instead: what do I really need? And what do I actually really want? And the answer wasn't maximum revenue. The answer was enough income to support my family while having the time and energy to be present for my son, to do the work that feels meaningful, and to not lose myself in the hustle. And that, my friends, that's emotional profit. So, emotional profit is having time to be present with your children, doing work that aligns with your values, not dreading Monday mornings, feeling energized rather than drained by your business, making decisions from inspiration rather than desperation, having the flexibility to pivot when life demands it. Now, I want to be really clear here. I'm not saying money doesn't matter. Of course, it matters. We live in a world where we need money to survive. We need to pay our mortgages, feed our families, and keep the lights on. But what I'm trying to say here is money is the baseline, not the goal. Think of it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yes, you need to meet your basic needs of survival, but once those are met, continuing to chase money at the expense of everything else is like trying to satisfy hunger by drinking water. It might fill your stomach, but it's not actually nourishing you. This is where knowing your numbers becomes so powerful, not to maximize profit, but to optimize balance. When you know exactly how much money you need to cover your essentials, you can make conscious choices about how much of your life energy is willing to exchange for income beyond that baseline. Maybe you discover that you need $5,000 a month to cover all of your essentials comfortably. Great. Now you know your floor. Everything beyond that becomes a choice. Do I want to work more to earn more? Or do I want to protect my time and energy for other forms of wealth? Because here's what I've learned: true wealth isn't just about money, true wealth is having options. One of my favorite moments in this conversation with Dana was when we talked about this concept of starting at 70%. She calls it the C plus energy. And it's so powerful that I want to spend some time here. Both Dana and I come from educational backgrounds. We teach that students need to be operating at about 70 to 80% proficiency to successfully learn and grow. If there's a 95% accuracy, they're not being challenged and they need to level up. If they're below 60%, the material is too hard and they're going to get frustrated and quit. The sweet spot for learning is right there in the middle of 70%. So, why do we think that we need to be at 100% before we start our business? This is perfectionism and is killing our dreams before they even have a chance to breathe. I see this all the time with my clients that I work with in bookkeeping. They have an idea, a passion, something they know they're meant to do, but they keep waiting. And they say, like, oh, I need to take one more course before I do this, or I need to get certified on this thing, or I need to save money more before I can start, or I need to have the perfect website. I need to figure out my entire business plan. And you know what all those mean? They mean I'm scared, and that's okay. Fear is normal. Fear is your nervous system trying to protect you, just like Dana mentioned. But here's the thing: fear is not a stop sign, it's a directional signal. When Dana shared that she went back to contract work when her business dipped without shame, just with practical clarity, that's 70% of the energy. That's saying, I don't have to this all figured out, but I'm committed to making this work and I'll do what needs to be done. That's different from the perfectionism saying, I need to have it all figured out before I start. Here's your permission slip. You're not supposed to know everything. You're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be at 70%, period. Because you know what happens when you start at 70%. You learn, you grow, you adjust, you get feedback from real clients, real situations, real challenges. And that's how you get to 80%, then to 90. But if you wait until you think you're at 100% before you start, you'll never start. Or, or by the time you finally start, the market has changed, the circumstances have changed, or worse, you talked yourself out of it entirely. I spent years thinking I need more credentials, more preparation, more everything, two master's degrees, certifications, experience. And you know what I discovered? Those degrees sometimes worked against me. I became overqualified for positions. I had to dim my light to fit into boxes that weren't made for me. The breakthrough came when I gave myself permission to start where I was, with what I had, and figure it out as I went. Now, let's talk about something Dana called Lone Ranger syndrome, because this is huge and especially for women. When I was running the daycare, one of the biggest operational challenges I faced was teachers socializing with each other instead of watching the children. And at first, I saw this as a problem to fix. I reminded them, you're here to supervise, not to chat with each other. But then I realized something profound. This wasn't a discipline problem, this was a human need problem. These teachers, they were almost all women, and they were desperate for adult connection. Many of them were isolated in their personal lives. Others were going through divorces or dealing with their own family challenges or just craving meaningful conversation with other adults. They weren't being unprofessional, they were just being humans. Don't forget, they were working with children all day, so the only time to engage with adults was when they were going outside at the playground. And I had to ask myself, if my well rested, well supported employees with full social lives can resist connecting with each other, what does that say about epidemic of isolation we're all experiencing? This is especially true for women who work from home, or who've left corporate environments to start their own businesses, or who've chosen to stay home with their children. I experienced this myself. After I closed the daycare, I started working from home. I noticed my English, as you know, is my second language, got rusty. I was stumbling over words because I wasn't speaking as much, and I was lonely. And that loneliness was affecting not just my mood, but my actual cognitive function. We are not designed to do life alone. We are not designed to build businesses alone. Dana talked about investing in coaching, masterminds, and community, and how those investments have both monetary and spiritual returns. I want to echo that loudly. Asking for help is not a weakness, it's a strategy. When you try to figure it out everything out for yourself, you're not being strong or independent. You're being inefficient and isolated. Think about it. Would you try to perform surgery on yourself, or would you cut your own hair? Would you represent yourself in court? Then why would you try to build a business without guidance from people who've already done it? So here's what I want to leave you with today. Building a business, building a life, is not about getting to 100% before you start. It's not about maximizing every dollar at the expense of your well being. And it's definitely not about doing it alone. It's about finding balance between profit and purpose, balance between ambition and rest, balance between what you're earning and what you're learning, balance between your financial bottom line and your emotional profit margin. Ask yourself these questions in the next few days. What's my emotional profit margin right now? Am I gaining or losing in terms of joy, energy, presence, and fulfillment? Where am I waiting for 100% when 70% will be enough to start? What permission do I need to give myself? Or who's in my corner? Do I have coaches, mentors, or a community supporting me? Or am I trying to lone range this myself? What does true wealth look like for me? Beyond money, what do I want my life to feel like? Remember, your biggest setback is not your identity, it's the setup for your greatest comeback. But rather than comeback doesn't happen by waiting for perfect conditions, right? It happens by taking imperfect actions with support, intention, and commitment to measuring success by more than just your bank account. So until next time, I am Patricia Oholeguy, reminding all of you that the books should balance, but so should your life. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message, leave me a review, or connect with me through the links in the show notes. And if you haven't already, go back and listen to my full conversation with Dana Hunter Fradella. It's packed with wisdom about turning setbacks into comebacks. Also, if you're struggling with the numbers side of your business, I want you to understand your financial floor so you can make better decisions about your emotional profit margin and reach out. That's exactly the work I love to do. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of the Book of Balance podcast. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the insights we shared. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss a future episode. And as promised during the show, you'll also find a link in the description with today's guest information, website links, and all the mentions we talked about during the episode. And if you're a do-it-yourself entrepreneur, you can join the Clarity Compass method at claritycompassllc.com. It's a monthly subscription where business owners like you dedicate just 1 hour each week to work in their books, get their questions answered, and stay consistent with their support of a community committed to financial clarity. Now, if you'd like to connect with me personally, head on to my website, oholeguy.com, to schedule your complimentary 15-minute consultation. It's the perfect way to get your personalized bookkeeping questions answered and explore how the white glove services can support your business. And on the last note, remember, we are not lawyers or financial advisors. Everything shared here reflects our professional opinions and is provided solely for educational purposes and entertainment purposes only. So thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep your compass set on clarity.